Hey guys, and welcome back. There's one other feature I wanted to cover in the GitHub Codespaces service, and that is the ability to create encrypted secrets for your codespaces. Now, there might be things like API keys or other types of secrets that are specific to your user account. So when you're logged into GitHub and you create a GitHub Codespace, you only want those secrets to be available to you personally, not anybody who has access to your shared GitHub repository. So that's something we can actually configure as an environment variable for that GitHub Codespace. And then anytime that you personally spin up a Codespace, you'll be able to see those secrets as environment variables, whereas other users that are collaborating on your GitHub repository will not be able to see them. So just really quickly here, if we take a look at our organization, which is CBT Trevor, and then we have this organization repository called GitHub Codespaces. This is kind of our shared working environment with the rest of our colleagues, because this is where our application code would go as we're building out some kind of application. So on this organization repository, if there's any common API secrets that we need to share with the rest of the team, we would probably configure those at the repository level. So on this repository, if we drill over to settings and then scroll down and go to secrets, you can see that we have the ability to set repository level secrets right here. And I've actually used this feature a fair amount in some of my other training on GitHub Actions workflows so that you can use secret values for things like AWS Cloud secret access keys that you want to use inside of a GitHub workflow, GitHub Actions workflow rather. You can store those in the repository level secrets and then reference those inside of the GitHub Actions workflows. However, if there are API keys, as we talked about, that are specific to you individually that are not to be shared with the rest of the team right here, then you can configure those on your individual Codespaces settings. And that is another GitHub profile level, not a repository, but a profile level setting, similar to the dot files setting that we looked at in the last video. So if we come up to the top right corner here again for our user account, and then we drill down under settings right here, these are our personal account settings for our GitHub account. And if we scroll back down to Codespaces here, this is the same screen where we configured that dot files beta feature, where we basically said, here's my personal repository that has a install script that I want to execute anytime that I deploy a new Codespace. Now, right below that, we have this option to create Codespace secrets. And as you can see, it describes what those are. Secrets are environment variables, so it'll be exposed to the Codespace as an environment variable, and we can use that from Bash, we can use it from Python, we can use it from any process that's running in that Codespace. They're encrypted by GitHub, and they're only exposed to Codespaces that you personally create for yourself. So if we create a new secret here, and I'll call this Trevor Secret Key, and I'll set the value to Trevor likes to eat bacon and any kind of meats. And then we'll go ahead and just add that secret here. Of course, we have to also select the repositories that we want to expose it to. So let's do our CBT Trevor / GitHub Codespaces. So let me do a search for Codespaces. So CBT Trevor / GitHub Codespaces. So that will be the repository that we're working on with other team members, but we want this secret for just us to be exposed to that environment. So we'll say add secret. And now we need to go ahead and either rebuild our Codespace environment or we need to restart it. So as the documentation says right here for Codespaces encrypted secrets, once you have created a secret, it will only be available when you either create a new Codespace or when you restart the Codespace. So if you have a current Codespace, you'll need to stop the Codespace and then resume it in order to use that environment variable. So if I was to come over to my Codespace environment right here, I'm going to close this old one. And if I do a, let's say, get child item on the env drive, that's a PowerShell thing. If I look for that Trevor secret key, I don't see that environment variable here. So here's term program. I don't see any other T environment variables. So let's go ahead and restart our Codespace. So we'll say stop Codespace, We'll say Codespaces, stop current Codespace, and just access that from the command palette. And then once that has been stopped, we'll go ahead and just get it restarted. And then we should have access to that environment variable. So we'll go ahead and just click on that button to restart it. Plus, you can always go over to your Codespaces right here, and you can open it in your browser right here. So that'll be under your user settings up here, and then just go to your Codespaces. That'll list out any Codespaces that you've provisioned across different organizations. And then you can choose to either open it in the browser, or you actually have this option here to open it locally in VS Code as well. But let's come back over here, and we'll give it a second to just spin up here. And this time it's going to be a little bit faster because we're not actually re-provisioning it. All we did is we stopped it and then restarted it. So it doesn't have to go back and install all the extensions. All those extensions should still be installed from the previous execution. Sure enough, you can see my 52 extensions there. So that part's fine. That's not going to take any extra time. But as we can see right here in the terminal, let me see, terminal, where's my terminal? Show me my terminal. Debug terminal? No. What happened to it? I think it's still starting up. So here's my terminal, and then we'll fire up PowerShell. And then we'll do get child item on the env drive, PS drive. And sure enough, now you can see that we've got this new environment variable, Trevor secret key, and it has my super secure API key right there. So that's basically how you can set up API secrets that are specific to just your user account. You can use those on Codespaces, again, as long as you have allowed them to be used on those particular repositories. So if you try to go to a different repository and use that secret and it doesn't show up, then you want to come back to your settings, go to your Codespaces, take a look at this secret right here, and make sure that any repositories that you want to use it on are actually listed right here. Otherwise, that secret simply won't be available for Codespaces for those particular repositories. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.